This is Sudan, the largest country in Africa, rich in oil, minerals, fertile land, and water. The Nile, the longest river in Africa, traverses its length. Sudan was victim to one of the longest-running civil wars of the 20th century, one that took over 2 million lives. This war has often been characterized as one between the Muslims in the north and the Christians here in the south. The north lies below the Great Sahara Desert and is part of North Africa and the Middle East. It is largely Muslim. South Sudan lies here in Central Africa, trading with the East African countries, Uganda and Kenya. A bitter war raged here from 1983 to 2005, the longest civil war of the 20th century. 4 million were forced to leave their homes, many of them Christians. Archbishop Daniel Dengbol was recently installed as Archbishop of all Southern Sudan. He remained throughout the war and now presides over a growing church.
I think it was the toughest time that the Church of God in the Sudan has gone through. The church was almost annihilated because every time they were to arrest me and to harass me and my priest.
Tim Windmeyer is country director for Samaritan's Purse, which has investigated the lost churches in South Sudan. 95% of Sudan's Christians live here in the south.
We found churches that were burned, bombed, destroyed by some outside force. We found well over 500 churches.
He also investigated the persecution.
When I started to hear the stories of the pastors, of the congregations, of the people that were in the church when they burned or were nearby or had to flee their homes.
Tim introduced Pastor Samuel LeMay Richard.
Were you ever tortured, physically tortured during the war?
Yeah, my family was kidnapped and I was stripped naked and they took me together with my children.
What happened to your sister?
I was tied down. My sister started crying and said, please leave for me this bread. And from there they shot. The bullet caught her on the thigh and also the other thigh. From there, my sister died.
A tragedy too unbearable to recall. His sister died. Although government troops did destroy churches and mosques in this part of Sudan, most were destroyed by the former rebels, including Pastor Samuel's church, twice, in 1989 and 1996. The destruction left these communities without a core, without a center from which the community could rebuild. Throughout Sudan, Samaritan's Purse is planning to build over 100 new churches every year. Muslims and Christians work together in their construction. Pastor Samuel's mobilization is complete. His church will be fully rebuilt soon. The war between North and South did end in 2005 in a deal brokered by the Americans.
With this peace agreement, the SPLM and the National Congress Party government have brought half a century of war to a dignified end. With this peace agreement, there will be no more bombs. There will be no more bombs falling from the sky on innocent children and women. And instead of the cries of children and the wailing of women and the pain of the last 21 years of war, peace will bless us once more with hearing the happy giggling of children and the enchanting ululations of women who are excited in happiness for one reason or another.
The North agreed to split oil revenues with the South. That has brought over $1 billion a year into the South to help build infrastructure. But in much of South Sudan, improvement is hard to find. Despite billions of dollars that's been pumped into the local economy, most of South Sudan looks like this, like it did maybe 100 years ago. There's no running water, no electricity, healthcare that's very hard to get, no paved roads, and in this particular village, you have no cars, no motorcycles, only a lone bicycle. Since the war ended, millions have returned home from refugee camps with great hopes of a better future. But most refugees are returning to very little, like these villages outside of Juba, capital of South Sudan. Joseph is the village leader. We sat down with him outside his home.
I got a lot of returnees. They came from different places. Others come from Khartoum, Uganda, Kenya, Central Africa, Congo, and even from America. As the IDPs, they don't have even sleeping places. In one house or in one family, you can find, I got a good number of people. They are just staying with their relatives.
Do you have running water in your village?
No, I don't have.
Do you have electricity?
Electricity is not there.
No electricity.
Yeah. We are really caring that there are a lot of money given to the government. So up to this time, we don't see any work which is going on. No any development which is going on.
Over 1 million refugees have returned to the immediate area, but there are not enough houses for them. One of the biggest complaints is the almost complete lack of infrastructure. Take roads as an example. Even after billions of dollars have been poured into the local economy, very few miles have been paved. That means that during the rainy season, some of the roads can be completely impassable. Although South Sudan is the size of Texas, it has only 10 miles of paved road. Roads are the lifeblood of development, bringing goods to market cheaply and efficiently. But towns in the far south are completely cut off from the capital city. The lack of decent passable roads has a deadly impact. Dr. Louis Denda is chief of pediatrics at the Juba Hospital. Many young mothers can't get to hospital to deliver their babies. Their children pay the price.
The type of injuries, they're quite different. Some are traumatic, some are even motorbike injuries, some are fall from bed, and so on.
Lack of transport can turn the simplest of injuries into life-threatening ones.
This is one of the patients coming from Torit. Is Peter Akel, is 8 years, and the case is actually fall from a tree. So he got a fracture in the arm. Unfortunately, they delayed in the village, and in the village, maybe they don't have access to come to hospital. And when they came to the hospital, the entire left arm has undergone necrosis.
Peter's an example of how very poor infrastructure and lack of healthcare facilities can really hurt a child. He had fallen from a mango tree,
Yes.
and ordinarily it would be a simple fracture and it could be treated, but because he was so far away, 5 to 6 hours by road, by the time he got here, it was all badly infected, and they ended up having to amputate his entire arm. One of the biggest problems here in South Sudan is dirty water. These men are all getting water for their families out of the Nile River just below a point where sewage is flowing into it. This has resulted in a major cholera epidemic here in the capital city of Juba that's already claimed over 24 lives. There is almost no running water. 45% of under fives suffer chronic diarrhea, one of the biggest killers. Trash sits uncollected by the side of the road. Open sewers lie close to housing and drain into the Nile during heavy rains. Malaria-carrying mosquitoes breed in standing water. Is most of the diarrhea that you see right here from dirty water?
Presumable. Most of the cases are related to the hygiene of the water, the way people are dealing with water, the way people are purifying the water, treating the water, and then the way they are keeping the water. I think this is number one reason, including the environment and then the disposal of the waste right in the area. Because if you see the disposal of the waste here is the main problem.
Dozens of women wait to be seen in the outpatient department with children who have diarrhea. An entire ward has been set aside for treating cholera. Women walk hours with water on their heads. These men use bicycles to bring water home from the Nile. This is the most dangerous place in the world to be a mother. She's just 20 years old and is at high risk of dying while giving birth to her baby.
South Sudan has the highest maternal mortality rate in the world. Here's an example. Anastasia has been in labor for 4 days with no medication, no anesthesia. She's one of 20 patients here. No midwife and no doctor.
With little prenatal care, it's also the most dangerous place to be an infant.
If your baby's born prematurely, unfortunately, it's pretty much out of luck because they don't have any facilities.
These children are sick. Some have been beaten, others injured or burned. They suffer the highest death rate in the world. UNICEF reports that Southern Sudan ranks as the worst place in the world for many key indicators of women and children's well-being, including its rates of chronic malnutrition, primary school completion, immunization, and antenatal care. UNICEF found conditions shocking.
With no infrastructure, with very little development, healthcare is one of the sectors that really struggles because primary health care centers, getting the medicines even to the clinics or to these areas that they need, it's almost impossible to do in some of the far-reaching areas. And so to make it happen, people still continue to fly medicines to different places or fly mosquito nets and try to fly people to these different areas to do their work because it's almost impossible to reach there by road.
This is the main hospital in Ye. I visited here almost exactly 10 years ago after a major battle between the rebels and the government. At that time, the hospital was almost a complete shambles. 10 years later, you see little visible difference. Locals complain there's still very few medications and very little in the way of supplies.
During my trip here in 1998, there was a major famine. Conditions were appalling.
You ask any mother how many children she has, and she'll always tell you this many dead and this many living. This child isn't even in the late stages of starvation yet.
This is not late stage
This
starvation?
is not late stage, well, I mean, relatively speaking.
What kind of shape are people here?
We get all kinds of different shapes of people. Now this man just collapsed. I just gave him some oral rehydrating solution. He's just collapsed from hunger.
Ten years later, improvements in hospitals are hard to find. In this one, conditions have recently deteriorated. Heather Miller took me on a tour of the Ye Hospital.
This hospital is very typical of third world countries as opposed to first world countries. And it's definitely a stark contrast to what you would be used to.
Look at this scene here. This is unbelievable, isn't it?
I want you to take note of the
people on a bed.
sandbag. That's traction. That's their version
This
of
is
traction.
what you use for traction?
Yeah.
How well supplied is this?
Very poor. They do have a pharmacy and a med stock. Unfortunately, it's usually depleted, and you typically have to go downtown to buy your medications for your patients. And you might have one circulating nurse, if you're lucky. But you'll
Oh, no,
see-
wait a minute. Let me hear that again. 20 patients here, one circulating nurse, if you're
If
lucky.
you're lucky.
Unbelievable.
They have tried to provide mosquito nets for all of their inpatients. There is a lot of pregnancy cases where the mother has malaria, the infant has malaria, and often the baby ends up dying. So that's a big problem.
Heather, we have been here at this hospital for at least a half an hour. How many doctors or nurses have you seen?
So far, I've not seen one.
So you can imagine you have 20 people in this ward, another 15 over there, 35 patients, and in a half an hour, no doctors, nurses, technicians, laboratory workers, nothing.
The lack of decent, available health care has given South Sudan the worst maternal and child mortality statistics in the world. UNICEF says there is one doctor per 100,000 people. Only 5% of births are attended by skilled health staff. Preventable diseases, such as tuberculosis and diarrhea, cause most deaths and illnesses. 1 in 4 children dies before the age of 5. You have a unit here for very sick newborns. Now,
Yes.
usually you'd have a special unit, special precautions.
Exactly.
They'd be separated from the other patients. Why are they thrown in to a general pediatric ward?
Well, the reason is simply because we don't have enough rooms, and we don't even have the facilities where to have the neonatal unit. Although there is an effort.
So no equipment for neonatal.
Yes.
You don't have the incubators, you don't have the computer equipment, you don't
And
have
we
the
don't
heart
have-
rate monitors.
We don't have the staff even.
So you have one of the highest rates of death
Yeah.
for newborns like this
Yeah.
in the world.
Yeah.
Why?
The highest newborn mortality is actually associated with the deliveries. Usually it is a complicated deliveries. And this complicated delivery affects the mother and affect the infant as well. That's why you have the highest mortality as well as the newborns are concerned. This baby is now 5 days here. He's admitted because of running temperature, and the breathing was not that okay, and breastfeeding was very poor.
What's his name? Ismuhu?
Baby Michael has not yet been named.
Hasn't even been named.
Yeah.
He's in the hospital.
Yeah. She delivered alone in the house, and so delivering alone means it's already a complication to the mother. It could be sepsis, it could be infection, the immediate one. If there are other problems, the circumstances where the child was delivered, we don't know, so the child may immediately get infection as well. If the services are there, the mothers, they come there and they are told what they are actually supposed to eat,
But she
the
hasn't
nutrition.
she wasn't told about nutrition,
Yeah.
what to eat,
Yeah.
even to go into the hospital
Exactly.
to deliver.
Yeah, she need to be told about nutrition and importance of delivery in the hospital, and care about herself, and then she need to be told about immunization herself, and about what to deal with the baby.
As we leave baby Michael, it's hard to know if he'll survive. His chances, poor. There is no electricity in most cases. Even the most basic supplies are missing.
Most of the health services, the basic ones, are not there. Some of these patients, basically, they have problems related to nutrition. Some are coming from very far. They are not supposed to come here. They are supposed to have some dispensaries or health centers where they can get some basic services.
What are you missing right here in this hospital? What do you need that you don't have?
We don't have plasters. People get fractured, and then still they need to.
Do you have enough consumables for surgery?
Not enough. Consumables are really very difficult to replace because the consumption is very high and the supply is very, very, very less. Even including gloves, not enough.
Not enough gloves for surgery?
Yeah.
Do you have enough doctors?
Not enough. Yeah.
To my own assessment, I can say about 80% of Southern Sudan is still underdeveloped because no roads, no schools, no health facilities, and totally people are still in suffering.
The Civil War did end here in 2005 in a peace agreement brokered by the Americans. This peace agreement guaranteed about $1 billion a year in oil revenues that would come here to the South to help rebuild infrastructure and build a democratic government. But as you look around so many towns here in the South, that improvement is very hard to find. Why? The tough answer is corruption. The more gentle one is mishandling of funds.
The New York Times reports the government in South Sudan has already been undermined by corruption scandals, including one in which a minister paid double the market price for hundreds of vehicles. The Times of London reports an investigation by the South Sudan Anti-Corruption Commission found dramatic overexpenditure. South Sudan's anti-corruption head, Pauline Riak, recorded over 14,000 cases of corruption in the first 6 months of 2008 alone. She told Reuters, "This is outright stealing throughout the nation."
To reduce infant mortality, to increase all sorts of mortality, to deliver better services to the people, governments should spend a lot of money on hospital, to spend a lot of money on primary health care, so that the load is carried at the periphery. It's very discouraging, especially when you hear about or you read in the newspaper the money has been mishandled. It is really very discouraging.
Corruption is called the first enemy of development.
We are reading. Really, the mishandling of money is there. So because I don't know the corruption or what it is, the money is disappearing.
Church leaders pray for an end to corruption. The church, they say, has the moral backbone to fight corruption.
The corruption will not go out unless people are informed, and they have to know how bad it is. Because in every village you go in the Southern Sudan, you can't find a clinic, you can't find a clear water for the people to drink.
The government, however, here in the South insists there was so much destruction over so many years of war, it's just hard to see much improvement.
The Chief of Staff of the Southern Army, the SPLA, points to the degree of destruction.
You know, the magnitude of destruction in South Sudan has been that high. And even before this war, there has actually been nothing that was in South Sudan as we talk. And the destruction that has been carried out is also very, very, very high. And of course, whatever is being done, you really don't feel it. But I think the government of South Sudan have really done a lot. There are few schools that are now functioning. They were not there before, they were completely destroyed. There are some few clinics that are functioning. There has been some road improvement in some areas. Yeah, in a way, maybe some money have gone this way or that way, but I think much of the money has gone to some project that the government would want the money to go into.
A crackdown on ghost civil servants, thousands of non-existent employees on the government payroll, is planned. The humanitarian crisis in South Sudan is one of the world's worst. Girls in Southern Sudan are more likely to die in pregnancy or childbirth than complete primary education. 1% finish elementary school. Ironically, South Sudan is poorer than Darfur, with far worse conditions for health. Darfur is in the west of Sudan. The key to successful development is building a core to a community and instilling solid ethical values.
This church was rebuilt by Samaritan's Purse, one of the largest humanitarian organizations here in South Sudan, with over 600 humanitarian aid workers. What they do is they begin in a community by rebuilding the church. Once they've gained the trust and confidence of the village elders, then they move into vocational training, education, and schools. It has a unique impact in the community, largely because it's so highly effective.
Tim Windmeyer leads the team. He visits a village with few services to conduct a needs assessment.
Tim, this is on the outskirts of Juba. Juba has really sort of been a city of hope for a lot of returnees, people in different parts of South Sudan. What do they find when they come here?
Well, you're exactly right. We're finding a lot of returnees, people that moved to Kenya, Uganda, other parts of East Africa when they left Sudan, and now are coming back. When they find their way back here, they settle in Juba, looking primarily for jobs, looking for something to do to support their family. They're leaving jobs in other areas.
Do they find jobs?
Some, yes, the lucky ones. Others sometimes have a lot of trouble finding something to do.
Don't?
Yeah, there's a lot of trouble finding good positions.
So this family here looks like they don't have much.
Yeah, let's talk to them and see. Aywa. Okay, for Nasma Dukan. Ayo, fikir. Aywa, unas bamu loke fasa. Shagal hena? Ha? Shagal hena? Ma shagal. Begitu gadim wala? Aywa. Aywa.
Tim, what's her story?
Well, just hearing, she's been here in Juba for some time, but just kind of getting a little bit of the story of, there is the hospital, it's in town. There was another hospital closer by here. However, it was closed a while back because they didn't have another contract to keep going. There's a couple of boreholes around, or hand pumps that they use for water, but one of them is broken. So everyone is having then from this area to go to one hand pump as well.
Do they have any running water?
No running water. Certainly no running water.
Do they have electricity?
No electricity.
Do they have a car?
No car, no motorbike. They did mention that they do have a bicycle.
That's it.
That's it.
There are hundreds of humanitarian organizations in South Sudan, but Samaritan's Purse delivers its services in a highly unique way.
We want to share our faith, we want to share our beliefs, we want to share our lives with those around us, not by standing on a soapbox and telling them exactly what they need to do or how they need to be doing it or how their lives are wrong, but more meeting people where they are, loving them where they are. If they need a glass of water, we give that to them as best we can. Sit with them and be with them on whatever need that they have. And so, as a Christian organization, we have that extra goal of it's not about the numbers all the time. Certainly we want to help as many people as possible, but it's more building those relationships and really uplifting the spirits of those that we're trying to help as well.
That's evident in each and every encounter, from the hospital to the church.
Good to see you.
This is the heart of the operation in the provincial capital of Yei. Behind these iron gates is an entire compound. The secret to success is this workshop.
Father, as we begin work this day, God, we pray for their protection. We pray for their help, God.
Each morning begins with a prayer and a song.
On the day of the Pentecost, arising mighty wind, we from the upper room, baptize all of them. On the day of the
Each component of the church is manufactured here by a highly skilled working team.
the upper room, and baptize all of them. Greater power, the power of Holy Ghost.
Here on your left is our carpentry workshop where we make all of our benches, our pulpits, everything that'll be going to the church.
From beams and supports to the altars themselves.
How are you so effective? Number one, it's the grace of God. We have been so fortunate and we've been able to get so many things done that shouldn't have been able to happen. LRA are in the way, something's happening. We always find a way to get through. The second is just, you have to really plan for a year at a time in Sudan. Roads close, things happen, everything changes, so we've got to have enough inventory stock here. We've got to have our workshops running so far in advance that, you know, we can always stay ahead of the game.
You've got an amazing team here. How do you put it together?
Again, it's the grace of God, really. We find people that are dedicated, that want to come, want to help community, really want to love on people and share their lives with people. And that dedication is what drives them then to come to Sudan, as well as their job skills and their professional abilities. It also doesn't hurt that we have a nice place for them to stay and be with each other here.
So this is home.
This is home.
Tim and his crew live in these Spartan cottages. No air conditioning, no running water. They eat and pray together, bound together by a common mission.
This is our field operations office.
Tim, this is impressive. Look at this. Are these all your different locations?
These are some of them, not all of them.
That's amazing.
A lot of the locations that they're...
That's not it. That's about half of what we're doing right now.
That's pretty impressive. From headquarters, prefabricated churches are sent all across Southern Sudan on nearly impassable roads. With few passable roads, small plains, our House Samaritan's team has to travel to remote locations, like this one in the far south.
So how long from start to finish? Once the construction crew moves in, it's really only a couple of weeks. All of this is kind of the prep work to get everything ready for a construction crew to actually start building.
There are a lot of things you could do in terms of development down here, because you look around and there isn't anything out there. Roads, electricity, running water, in many cases hospitals, schools. Why start with churches?
Well, you've got to start development somewhere. Samaritan's Purse, as a Christian organization, we want to partner with and build up the church. We want to build up the congregation so that they can continue to move out. So we want to elevate that church and give them a sense of meaning and something, a real asset, so that they can move further out into the communities there.
Here, workers are laying down the foundation of a church and a community. Chris James Lewis is the man in charge.
Started here last week with the actual construction. It takes a couple of days to get the whole crew set up, and you can see the camp over here. They also had to hire a bunch of guys locally. We had to get all the materials here and everything else. So it's a bit of a process, but once they get going, you know. This church has actually been waiting probably 2 months. They've had those blocks made over there.
Oh, nice.
They've been waiting for the construction crews, so yeah, it's good to see that they're finishing up the block making quickly, so that everything is ready for the construction crews when they arrive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm coming to see the work.
Okay.
How's it going?
The work is going well.
Good.
How are you?
Yeah, fine.
Good. Nice to meet you.
He's been our key man in this whole process from mobilization onwards.
Okay.
Yeah. So
fantastic.
We fly up the Nile from Juba to the village of Kajukeji. Children greet our cars on the ride from the dirt strip. A few miles can take an hour. The town is cut off from the rest of Sudan. The church in Kajukeji is opening today. Local women prepare a feast. The clergy prepares to celebrate. They inaugurate the church by circling it 5 times.
We want to dedicate and open this church. Ngaju nakanisa ikarinti monye koti tore koti mule koti oloke.
Where do you go from the church?
I think that depends in a lot of different communities. We've seen churches that have actually themselves come together, and after they've got the church, they've created a development board within the church that, you know, really seeks to find out where and how they can interact in their community. So education and schools have come up using the same church building, or you know, the women's group at church will use it to do additional training for women outside of the community. So we're seeing the church itself already start to mobilize and reach out and bring in people on a number of different development activities.
Bless, O Lord, who will be using
Here is a group of people, Samaritan Purse,
coming, their own staff working with our people, putting together this church. As a bishop coming in, I'm just led over a year as a bishop here. I have been encouraged by the fact that having these churches coming up, particularly at this time of war, when we are doing a lot of construction and reconstruction, has been a big encouragement.
While the church in Kajukeji is just beginning, the SPC church in Juba is one of Samaritan's biggest triumphs, a vibrant congregation. Samaritan's Purse has brought teams of doctors and nurses to Sudan, running hospitals and undertaking nurse training. They also brought back Sudanese doctors, a lost boy trained in Cuba and living in Canada, helping to prepare for the diseases he would encounter in Sudan. Today, he works in pediatrics at the Juba Hospital.
Right now, the suffering is still there. We just came out from the war. It's very easy to destroy something, but it's very hard to build. I think there was nothing before the war, and we're just starting from the scratch. Everything is starting from zero. And it's very hard to start from zero because the need will be from any part. There are not any kind of priority in Southern Sudan. Everything is much needed.
I put my right hand in and put my right hand up and suck it a little.
In Juba, girls are back in primary school. And mothers are finally getting prenatal care. 8 primary health care centers provide acute health care, malarial control, immunization, and maternal and child care in Western Equatoria.
We're turning to Medical Ward 5 here to see how baby Michael is. This is the pediatric ward at the Juba Teaching Hospital where the very sickest newborn children are. Louis, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, sir.
Hey, it's good to see you.
Thank you.
We met Michael when he was critically ill. Now Dr. Louis comes to see if he survived. Michael is dramatically better.
General, he looks better. He looks better than yesterday, and obviously he has started to suck well. He's sucking the breast well, and the temperature is going down. Although still with Michael, the breathing is not that fine, so he's more happy about the improvement.
So baby Michael, compared to yesterday, doesn't have much of a fever. Seems a lot cooler. And remember how baby Michael's breathing was so rapid before? It's a little bit less rapid. His eyes are open. What a great success.
Yeah.
These water treatment tanks are being built with funds from the U.S. State Department to make sure water from the Nile is clean and healthy.
South Sudan has been one of America's greatest foreign policy triumphs. Pretty much everybody you speak to here gives the United States enormous credit for brokering the peace agreement between North and South. It's one place you hear genuine gratitude from every corner.
Well, first of all, we want to give thanks to American government because they managed to stand behind the CPA, which has been signed 2005. If it was not American behind the CPA, I think the CPA would have not been signed.
Support that has been given to us and the love that has been given to us by the American, we also feel that we very much love the people, we very much love what they have done for us, and we thank them very much. And we feel that they are highly welcome in South Sudan, and people would like to stay with them.
Sudan has been a bitterly divided country.
The 2005 peace agreement calls for a referendum in the year 2011. That's when the population here will be able to decide whether South Sudan becomes an independent country and breaks away from the rest of the Sudan, or whether it joins with Sudan to become one country. Now, after such a bitter civil war, you can imagine that many people here are calling for separation. The big surprise is that when we talk to Southern leaders, they now are calling for unity.
This is an enormous sea change. For generations, Southerners had called for separation from the North. Lieutenant General Oyedeng Ajak is the Chief of Staff of the SPLA.
The unity is very important for the country, and we hope we have the support of almost every section of the Sudanese. Thus, unity is strength.
The change is coming slowly, slowly. Many doctors are coming back. Many colleagues in the north are coming back to Southern Sudan.
The clergy preaches unity.
We as the church, we are for peace, we are for reconciliation, we are for forgiveness, and we want to see to it that people live in peace together in this great country of Sudan.
While others insist the South get a fair deal.
I believe that unity should be not at the expense of the rights of our people.
There is a strong feeling that peace and unity can work here as it has in South Africa.
The white and the black in South Africa, took only the leaders to talk to their people, and they were able to convince themselves that, yes, we are black, and yes, we are white, but South Africa is our country. You can be Muslim, you can be Arab, you can be African. If we said that this is a country called the Sudan, it belongs to all of us without any looking at the religion and looking at the racial issue. We just want you to recognize that we belong to this country.
This boy leaves hospital with his mother after recovering from severe burns. Once at risk of dying, he heads home with a real chance for a future.
What's your own personal sense of satisfaction?
Personally, I'm amazed because I can sit in the back of the church knowing that we had a small part to play in it, but the church mobilized their own people. They built the blocks. They were there throughout the construction. I just feel so completely honored and blessed to be a part of that, to be able to sit in the back of that and say, somewhere along the line, we had a small part to play in getting this building built for this church to use.
This is home to me. I've seen the need, and I feel like if I can do something to help meet the need, then why not?
Across South Sudan, congregations celebrate a new day.